Let us return to the listening silence within ourselves, not some distant realm, not a future attainment, but the hush that is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Be still, and know that I am God. We do not begin with words, because words begin with us. We begin with silence, because silence begins with God. We do not assemble new methods. We lay down our tools. We do not reach for God. We stop long enough to discover that God has never released us. Be still. Our first movement is not forward, but inward, not to get, not to make, but to behold what already is. Presence replaces performance. The instant we cease trying to invent a spiritual life and simply consent to the life that is already being lived as I. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God. The mind that plans, argues, measures, and bargains is the noise. The I that announces itself without sound is the truth. The kingdom of God is within you, and it requires no human assistance to be the kingdom. It requires our stillness to be known. We are told to pray without ceasing, and the only prayer that can be ceaseless is not a string of syllables, but a posture of listening. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. The listening ear is the altar on which every sweet evidence of harmony appears. Do you see? Not because we coax it, not because we instruct the Almighty in how to bless us, but because omniscience needs no consultant, omnipotence no reinforcement, omnipresence no courier. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, this is the triad of reality, sufficient without our help. To attempt to add our little lever to move the infinite is like trying to brace the sun with a twig. So now, beloved, let us practice what we preach, not to achieve a result, but to remember reality. For 20 seconds long enough for 2 or 3 easy breaths, let us hold a shared silence. Keep the finger, if only inwardly, upon the lips of thought. Do not reach out, do not speak mentally, do not count anything. Let the gentle tide of breath bear witness that something, someone already lives this moment. Be still with me now. That, dear ones, is the miracle that man can perform, the miracle of silence. The rest is God. Did you notice that nothing was added and yet everything was different? The same chair, the same room, the same body, but the atmosphere was altered, and the alteration came not because we manipulated reality, but because we yielded to it. I stand at the door and knock. We did not go to find a distant door. We opened within, and the knock was discovered to have been the rhythm of our own breath, the pulse of a life that is infinite being expressing itself as us. Be careful, then, that you do not burden silence with a purpose, for when you do, you have made a technique of it and it ceases to be prayer. The only form of prayer acceptable to God would be an absolute silence, not as a method to bend events to our will, but as a holy acknowledgement that the will already is perfect and complete. We are not operators, we are beholders. Man in his silence becomes the transparency through which the miracle-working spirit appears as harmony. No man, no woman performs a miracle except that miracle of getting out of the way. I know how subtle our habits are. We are trained in performance, and then we drag performance into the sanctuary and attempt to perform stillness. Lay that aside. If we accept 2 times 2 is 5, we spoil our entire mathematical demonstration. So if we accept that God needs a booster, a method, a secret syllable, or an urgent plea to accomplish what God is, we spoil the spiritual demonstration. The water is H2O. If we try to improve it, we do not have water. God is omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. If we try to improve God, we do not have God, we have imagination. Let us be still long enough to let God be God. You will find, as you cultivate this listening, that the silence is not empty, silence is full. In that unsaying, there is a presence that says, "Fear not, it is I." It is the I that has manna hidden where no thief can enter and no moth can corrupt the storehouse which I am. It is the I that goes before you to make the crooked places straight, that stands as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And you will see that the hardest work you will ever do is to stop working in the sense of spiritual labor, to give up the sweat of the brow as your Savior, and instead to watch, to listen, to let. Do not believe there are miracle workers. Do not be tempted to take these words, or any words, as if they were God. The power is not in the phrasing, but in the consciousness behind the words. And that consciousness is found when the mouth of thought is closed and the ear of spirit is open. "Why callest thou me good?" the Master asked. Even he refused to be the performer, pointing always to the Father within who doeth the works. If that was true of the Master, is it not true of us? Be still. From this moment forward, set the premise straight. Our task is to become transparency, to be a clear pane through which the light passes, uncolored by personal desire, unwarped by fear. We are not here to get health, to get supply, to get guidance. We are here to behold health, to behold supply, to behold guidance as the natural outflow of the I that is already in the midst of us. Take no thought for your life is not an invitation to negligence, but to trust. Thought is not the shepherd, I is the shepherd. And the sheep hear that voice, not because the shepherd shouts, but because the sheep grow quiet enough to recognize it. Let this be our invocation and our vow. Many times in each day, for 20 seconds, for 10 seconds, for one breath, withdraw from the contest of getting and enter the sanctuary of beholding. Keep the finger on the lips inwardly. Be still. Let the holy triad omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence announce itself. Then, when you rise to wash a dish or answer a letter or meet a face, you will not be the operator but the beholder, and what appears will be the effortless activity of grace. Presence replaces performance. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Be still in this hush question with me, not with the mind's clatter, but with the listening ear. Who acts when we stop acting? When the hand drops its private agenda? When the heart lowers its noise? When the brain lays down its schemes? What remains? It is not I, said the Master, but the Father within me that doeth the works. Do you see the pivot? Not I as a private actor laboring at divinity, but I as the name of God, I in the midst of me, announcing its own activity. In our human reckoning, we imagine that we bring God closer by method, by posture, by a particular order of thoughts. But in spiritual reckoning, there is no distance to close and no lever to pull. There is only the miracle of silence in which the I, that is omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, shows itself to be what it is, and harmony appears. We do not act upon God. Let that be our law. We do not persuade infinity. We do not push omnipotence into motion. We do not consult for omniscience. We are not operators of a divine machine. We are transparency, clear glass, unstained by fear or desire, through which the light passes as it will. If the glass is clouded with anxiety, the light appears dim. If the pane is painted with personal will, the light appears colored, but the sun remains the sun. Our work, if it may be called work, is not to produce the sun, but to let the window be clean. Be still. Do not believe there are miracle workers. Do not let your mind wander over the earth hunting for a person who has a way, a word, a technique that will make God act. There is no such person, there is no such word. Even the Master turned the attention away from person. Why callest thou me good? The goodness was the Father revealed, the works were the Father manifest, the man who could be seen was the beholder, the transparency. If that was the humility of the Master, who among us shall boast of a technique? The only miracle we may lawfully claim is the miracle of silence, of shutting the lips of thought and opening the ear of spirit long enough that the eye within is given room to be all that it is. Transparency is not passivity. It is purity. It is not indifference. It is innocence. It is not refusal to engage. It is refusal to intrude. When we are transparent, we are without private agenda. We stand as witness, not as author. We consent to the flow of grace. We do not attempt to channel it into patterns of our choosing. The river knows its bed. The wind knows its way. Omniscience requires no map we have drawn. In transparency, a strange and wonderful thing happens. What appears outwardly as our action, our steps, our words, our timing, is the effortless event of an inner poise. The very limbs move, yet not under strain. The very voice speaks, yet not under compulsion. Take no thought for your life is not license to laziness. It is the end of anxiety as shepherd. The I is shepherd. The sheep hear that voice when the pen of the head grows quiet and the gate of the heart swings free. Beholders, not performers. Stay with that. The performer asks, how shall I fix this? And the beholder asks nothing at all. He stands in the presence and watches grace be grace. The performer claims, I have done this, and so is bound to do it again and again, and to fear the day he cannot. The beholder bears witness, God has appeared as harmony, and so is free. For God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The performer must protect a reputation. The beholder has none to protect. The performer depends upon memory of methods. The beholder depends upon the living eye that is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Now let us be practical in the only practical way that counts in this life, in consciousness. For 10 seconds, only 10, notice the impulse to fix. Perhaps even in this very moment, the mind reaches for a tool. The heart reaches for a feeling. The body reaches for a posture. Notice that reach and release it. Keep the inward finger upon the lips. Be still. Do not add. Do not subtract. Do not improve. Let the listening ear take its rightful place. Speak, Lord. Thy servant heareth. 10 seconds. Silence. That is transparency in seed. The moment you refuse to rely upon your private reach and rested in the I that is, you stopped acting upon God and began to let God appear as harmony. Do you think nothing has happened because no word was spoken and no body moved? The cloud by day does not trumpet. The pillar of fire by night does not argue. Yet they go before you to make the crooked places straight. If you could see the inner landscape altered by those 10 seconds, you would never again despise the small obedience. You would never again distrust the stillness. I stand at the door and knock. Each micro silence is the opening of that door, and the one who enters is not a thought or a technique, but the living eye. You may ask, how shall I know that I am beholding and not secretly operating? You will know by the absence of strain and the absence of fear. Where there is a felt need to make something happen, you are in performance. Where there is the quiet recognition that something is happening that does not depend on you, you are beholding. You will know by love. Love does not manipulate, love abides. Love as law does not impose, it reveals. The fruits will be gentle, a soft word that turns away wrath, an intuition that arrives without effort, a supply that meets the day without toil. Do not watch for fireworks, watch for peace. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, not as the ego accomplishes, but as presence confers its own atmosphere. Be careful that you do not take these words as if they were God. The power is not in the syllables, not in quotations, not in my experience or yours. The power is in the consciousness behind the words. And that consciousness can only be known when the words subside. Many have gathered books and methods as if gathering shells on the shore of the sea of consciousness. Few have sat long enough on the sand to hear the sea itself. Be among the few. Do not collect, consent. Do not memorize, realize, be still. And remember, because this is a foundation and not a flourish, there are not two powers meeting in contest here. When you stop acting, you are not yielding to some opposite of good. You are not becoming prey to chance. You are acknowledging the one power that needs no opponent to be what it is. In that recognition, the fear that drives performance loses its engine. The pride that seeks authorship loses its stage. And the day is given back to God. Then, whether you move or rest, whether you speak or keep silence, whether you plan or watch a plan dissolve, the actor is the same, I in the midst of me. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence announcing themselves as unhurried sufficiency. So we go forward, if forward there be, not with a better technique, but with a lighter window pane. Let us make of our life a transparency, a light through which the inner light passes without obstruction until even our name is not a claim, but a witness to the name, I. Then presence replaces performance, and harmony appears without our contriving. Keep the finger upon the lips. Be still. Speak, Lord. Thy servant heareth. Be still. In this quiet, let us turn the face of consciousness to the name, not the syllables we utter when we introduce ourselves, not the biography we defend, but the name that spoke out of a bush that burned and was not consumed. I am. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. The I that is infinite being announces itself without voice, supplies without measure, guards without sentry. Before Abraham was, I am. When this I is acknowledged, not as a word in the head, but as presence in the core, sufficiency ceases to be a hope out there and appears as the atmosphere in here. The kingdom of God is within you, and the entrance is a silence in which the private I releases its grasp, and the true I takes its rightful place. Now hear the first purification, and without it nothing else will stand. One power. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord. Not two, not many, not a hierarchy in contest. One. If we begin with a divided premise, God and something else, our living will be conflict. If we begin with one, fear dissolves, because there is no rival to dread. Perfect love casteth out fear, not because love goes out to do battle with fear, but because love as one has no opposite. Omnipotence requires no reinforcement. Omniscience, no counselor. Omnipresence, no messenger. In the recognition of one power, there is a demand for silence, for who would speak in the court where the one judge is not judging but being the law itself. The great error is always a split. Two-power belief is the root disturbance beneath anxiety, beneath guilt, beneath the compulsion to control. When the mind trembles before a diagnosis and calls it power, it has made two. When the heart cringes before the opinion of a person and endows that person with the ability to bless or to curse, it has made two. When the calendar shouts deadline and the pulse runs as if time were a tyrant, we have made two. Idolatry is not ancient sculpture alone. It is the giving of power to anything, not God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me is not a primitive ban. It is a present instruction in spiritual physics. The moment we set an idol on the shelf of thought, a germ, a government, a bank account, a memory, a fear, we have established a second premise. And having done so, we must reap the confusion that follows a false reckoning. If we accept 2 times 2 is 5, we spoil our entire mathematical demonstration. The error may be small at the first sum, but build a bridge on that miscalculation and feel it tremble under your feet. If we acknowledge a power besides God even slightly, even just in case, we spoil the spiritual demonstration. We may continue for a time on momentum, prayers answered here, coincidences there, but sooner or later the edifice will shake because its cornerstone was compromised. Purity of results requires purity of premise. 1, power, not 2. Do you see the exactness? Spiritual law is not caprice. It is as inviolate as H2O is to water. If we try to dilute the formula with a second element, we do not have water. If we dilute God with a second power, we do not have God, we have imagination and its offspring, fear. But you ask, what of evil? What of the pains we feel and the injustices we witness? Shall we deny them? No, we shall not deny appearance. We shall deny its claim to power. Resist not evil does not mean to submit to wrongdoing. It means do not establish it as a second force by setting your private will against it. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. And the good we speak of is not human niceness. It is the recognition of one presence, one law, one life. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. The single eye does not glance from God to problem, from spirit to shadow, from I to they. The single eye beholds I as all, and in that beholding the shadows cannot persist. Lot's wife looked back, and in that very act of two-ness she became salt, a monument to divided attention. Keep the eye single. Now let us bring this down from the air of concept to the ground of practice, not with a new technique, but with purified premise. When the pulse quickens, do not argue with it, do not prove anything to it, do not marshal quotations to beat it into submission. Whisper inwardly, one power, one presence, one life, and then be still. The whisper is not a spell. It is a turning of the face to the sun. Do not keep whispering. Do not think you have found a mantra to manage reality. Say it as one puts a finger to the lips of a child, and then let silence have its way. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. In that brief obedience, you have withdrawn recognition from a second power and returned to the name. And I tell you, as you sow that purity, you will reap peace. Perhaps first as a breath that evens, then as a thought that softens, then as an outward arrangement that surprises you with its rightness, but the sequence is not yours to plan. Yours is the act of single-eyed beholding. We are tempted to use the word I as if it were a little sovereign, my will, my mind, my plan, and then we wonder why guilt and strain follow. Die daily to that personal word I, and let the I which I am take the throne. Why callest thou me good? The master asked, forever refusing the praise that would have established him as a second power. If even he would not accept that role, who are we to grasp at it? All that the Father hath is mine, not because I, the person, have accumulated merit, but because I, the name of God, am all. As we relinquish the ambition to be operators and return to the transparency of beholders, the law of consequence, what some call karmic recoil, finds no target in us. Punishment has been our own ignorance, rebounding against reality. Enlightenment ends it, not by plea, not by bargain, but by purity of premise. Do not believe there are miracle workers who can stand between you and the law of one, making exceptions for a fee or a promise or a flattery, be careful that you do not take the words mine or anyone's as if they were God. The power is not in the syllables, but in the consciousness behind the words. And that consciousness is one. Pay attention to the consciousness, not the phrases. Pay attention to the I, not the personality that utters it. Try the spirits. If any voice within or without trades, in fear, in favoritism, in the flattery of a second power, turn the face to the one and be still. Now let us try a simple obedience. For the space of a breath, perhaps two, whisper within. One power, one presence, one life, and then close the lips of thought. Do not look to see if something has happened. Do not peek at the clock to measure your success. Simply rest the attention in the name. In that resting, you have consented to be a transparency. You have refused to enthrone a rival. You have placed your day upon the altar of one. The fruits are the Father's. The peace is the Father's. The courage is the Father's. But the consent that is yours to give many times in each day, as this practice accumulates, not as repetition, but as renewed fidelity, you will notice that the very places where you once trembled begin to shine. The email that used to frighten you arrives, and there is a quiet knowledge of what to say or what not to say. The bill that once loomed like a giant appears, and either supply is present or the wisdom to release some lesser thing, to honor a greater integrity is given, and there is no fear in it. The face that once provoked offense now evokes compassion, not because you have excused wrongdoing, but because you no longer granted power. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? For thou art with me, thou not too. Keep the premise pure, beloved. Let your yes be yes to one, and your no be no to every suggestion of a second. When the storm rises on Galilee and the waves slap the sides of your boat, remember that the Master did not negotiate with wind and water. He revealed their non-power in the presence of one with the word peace. Let your word be silence more often than speech, but when speech is given you, let it be the simple assurance that I in the midst of me is God, that God is omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. Then whether you lift a spoon or carry a burden, whether you answer a summons or sit alone in a quiet room, you will not be a performer in the theater of two powers. You will be a beholder in the temple of one. So let us seal this in our hearts. Purity of results requires purity of premise. One power, not two. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me suffices. Be still. Many times in each day, at the threshold of a task or a thought, put the finger to the lips of mind, whisper one power, one presence, one life, and consent to be nothing and to witness everything. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, one, light without rival, shining itself as our day. Be still. Having set the premise of one, let us now face the word prayer with the same holy candor. What is prayer? Not petition, not persuasion, not the art of carefully arranged thoughts tipped heavenward in hope of moving the infinite. When ye pray, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, said the Master. The door is the lips of thought. The closet is the listening heart. The only form of prayer acceptable to God would be an absolute silence, not the sulking silence of disappointment, not the tense silence of strategy, but the obedient stillness of love that acknowledges omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, and leaves them free to be what they are. Keep the finger inwardly on the lips. Be still and know that I am God. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. This is prayer's posture. Not listen, Lord, thy servant speaketh, but the reversal of human habit, the turnover of the throne from mind to spirit, from performance to presence. Prayer, then, is not an attempt to introduce information to God, who is omniscience. It is the humble act of removing interference so that what God is may appear as what we call guidance, safety, supply. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Prayer listens for that I, not with ears of flesh, but with the inner ear that knows before it knows how it knows. My sheep hear my voice, not because they shout, but because they are quiet enough to recognize. Do not believe that the syllables on your tongue or on mine contain a power to change God or to twist events. Be careful that you do not take the words as if they were God. The power is in the consciousness behind the words, and that consciousness is encountered only when the words subside. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Spirit requires no prompter from us. If we accept 2 times 2 is 5, we may recite brilliant formulas and still build a crooked bridge. If we accept that God needs informing, coaxing, bargaining, we may recite beautiful prayers and still live in anxiety. Purity of results requires purity of premise, and the premise of prayer is silence, consenting to one. Let me show you how this lives. A woman called her Miriam wrote that every morning she sat at her kitchen table with a stack of fears masquerading as a prayer list. She would march through names, dates, debts, and deadlines, and by the end of her devotions she was more exhausted than when she began. One day, with tears on the wood and an ache in the ribs, she heard within, not in words, but as a gentle pressure, keep the finger on the lips. She closed the cabinet of speech and for 30 breaths did nothing. No verses, no vows, no pen, just the beholding. When the phone rang an hour later with news of a meeting she had dreaded, something in her was different. The meeting did not vanish, the dread did. She answered one question simply, she let 2 others pass without defense, and what needed to be done was done without friction. What changed? She asked me later. Nothing and everything. The outer lineaments were as they had been. The inner premise had been purified. She had prayed, not by speaking at God, but by listening for I, in quietness and in confidence, shall be your strength. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought, wrote the apostle. But the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. There is the core revelation. True prayer is the Spirit praying itself as your consciousness, wordlessly, perfectly, in ways the intellect could not imagine. We do not direct that intercession. We witness it. We do not decide its content. We accept its completeness. All that the Father hath is mine, not because I have prayed cleverly, but because I have been still enough to let the Father be the Father. Now, because we are not here to accumulate noble phrases, but to stand in living obedience, let us practice for 30 seconds, retire into the closet, not a place, but an inner hush, put the finger, if only as a gentle thought, upon the lips of mind. Do not form a sentence. Do not reach for a feeling. Do not bargain. Do not bargain. Do not bargain. Let the attention rest, soft and open, in the bare awareness of being. If anything arises within, let it pass as a cloud in a wide sky. If a fear knocks, do not answer. Keep the door of speech shut and the ear of spirit open. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. 30 seconds. Silence. That is prayer. Not long, not labored, not dramatic, and yet the atmosphere shifts. The same chair, the same room, the same body, but the air is cleaner within because we have ceased burning the fuel of fear and have allowed the wind to blow where it listeth. Beholders will recognize a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. Do not measure it. Do not look around the corner to see if something has worked. Prayer is not a tool, it is a trust. Take no thought, said the Master, not because life is unworthy of care, but because life cares for its own when we yield the reins. Make of this a living act of commitment. Many times in each day, at the sink, at the desk, on the threshold of a conversation, retire within for brief beholding. 5 seconds, 10, 30. The number is not law. The obedience is. Keep the finger on the lips. Whisper, perhaps, only to turn the face. One power, one presence, one life. And then let even that whisper dissolve into the silence that is prayer. In that stillness, you will not be passive, you will be transparent. Out of it, words may come soft, exact, timely, or no words at all. Only a gesture or a waiting that proves wiser than haste. Out of it, provision appears, not as coin dropped from a sky, but as right relation, right order, right release. Give us this day our daily bread is not a plea to a reluctant deity. It is a recognition that the storehouse which I am is always full, revealed in the measure of our stillness. Do not believe there are miracle workers whose phrases can do this for you. Do not get to relying on tools, teachers, trinkets, or tones. Try the spirits. If any practice inflames the sense of a second power, fear to be defeated, matter to be managed, lay it down. Prayer purges two-power belief by refusing to engage it. It will not wrestle with shadows. The single eye is the listening ear turned inward toward I, and when thine eye is single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Then the valley of the shadow is walked without terror. The lions of Daniel's den lie down as cats. The storm on Galilee hears peace, not as a contest, but as a revelation. So we seal this in simplicity. Prayer is obedient stillness that lets the I be all that it is. We do not act upon God. We consent to be nothing and to witness everything. Be still. Enter the closet and shut the door. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, one life without rival, announce themselves in the hush. And we, beholders, go about our day as the transparency through which that hush appears as harmony. Be still. Let us now allow the hush to walk on 2 feet through the day, to pass through doorways and screens and crosswalks as a silent companion. There is a principle the Spirit has taught all who will listen. Thresholds are bells. Every transition is a summons to the closet within the twist of a doorknob, the ding of an elevator, the click of a seatbelt, the first glow of the screen, the kettle's boil, the soft tap of a notification, even the moment your hand meets a pen. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. The gates are these thresholds. The doors are these little moments of passage. Lift them, and the King enters not as a pageant, but as presence. We are not adding hours. We are shifting attention. Seconds, not schedules. Fidelity, not duration. Be careful that you do not take what I say and fashion a ritual to lay upon your shoulders. This is not a new method by which to operate upon God. It is a gentle remembrance by which we cease to operate at all and become beholders. The threshold is the cue, the bell, the act is stillness, the fruit is harmony. Sprinkle the day with brief obediences. Let each threshold become an altar. How shall we begin? 3 breaths, 3 acknowledgments, and then silence. Not because numbers have holiness, but because the human mind sometimes needs a little corridor to the temple. On the first breath, in a whisper of recognition, omniscience. On the second, omnipotence. On the third, omnipresence. And then no words at all, only, speak, Lord, thy servant heareth, folding even that into hush. Keep the finger on the lips. Remember, the syllables do not move the infinite. They move us out of the doorway of our noise so that the infinite already present may be seen. Design your cues. Do not wait for holy hours. Consecrate common seconds. Let the hand upon the doorknob be an instant altar before crossing a room. Be still for the space of 3 breaths. Let the elevator's bell be the bell of the temple. Doors close, breathe, acknowledge, listen. And then, and only then, step into your next floor. Let the kettle's first rattle or the coffee machine's hum be your psalm of entry. When the phone lights, do not pounce, pause. 3 breaths, 3 acknowledgments, proceed. When the seatbelt clicks, do not rush the road, rest the mind. Acknowledge one power and then engage the wheel. When the browser opens, when the meeting starts, when the hand lifts to knock lift, first the inner gate, let the King of Glory come in. Write them upon the doorposts of thy house, said the old instruction. Let us write not words upon wood, but silence upon the edges of our hours. Do you see? Not in the words, but in the consciousness behind the word. In all my years, I have never found God impressed by a clock or persuaded by a chant. I have found God present, omnipresence, waiting only upon our non-waiting, the dropping of our thought, to behold the eye that is already here, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Now, let us not talk about it without living it. Choose one threshold that is near at hand, not noble, not far. Perhaps the very next time your eyes go from this page to the room, or your hand moves to the glass of water, or your device signals a new message. We will rehearse it now, not as theater, but as transparency. Be still. Place in thought your hand upon that doorknob, your thumb upon that screen, your palm upon that wheel. For 10 seconds, keep the finger upon the lips of mind. First breath, omniscience, thou knowest. Second breath, omnipotence, thou art able. Third breath, omnipresence, thou art here. Now fold the phrases back into the silence that is prayer. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. 10 seconds. Be still. Do you notice how the air within clears? How the compulsion to leap, to fix, to perform loosens its grip? This is not hypnosis. This is honesty. We are acknowledging one power at the threshold. And in that acknowledgement, the divided attention that drives anxiety dissolves. The outer world does not stop turning, but our turning to it is from the center now. What follows an answer, a pause, a release, will not be born of worry's womb, but of wisdom. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Do not believe that 10 seconds are too small to carry the infinite. If we accept 2 times 2 is 5, we spoil the whole demonstration. If we accept that only long hours can sanctify a day, we spoil the day before it begins. A right premise carries its own proportion. The cloud by day does not lengthen because your schedule is long. The pillar of fire by night does not diminish because your pauses are brief. The question is not how long did you stop, but who entered when you did. When the I, that is the name, walks through the door with you, the room does not stay the same. You may say, but I will forget. Of course you will forget, and then remember, and then forget, and then remember. Eternal vigilance is the price of spiritual living, and it is a glad price. Do not punish yourself for missing a bell. The very recognition that you missed it is a bell. Turn the face, lift the gate, and begin again. Many times in each day, pray without ceasing does not demand endless words. It invites endless availability. Threshold after threshold, door after door, silence after silence. Now broaden the map. Make a small list, not to frame a shrine of paper, but to invite fidelity. Choose 3 thresholds to consecrate this week. Perhaps the hand on the front door morning and night, the first notification after lunch, the seat belt each time you drive. If you wish, add the refrigerator handle, the elevator ding, the calendar chime, the faucet's turn, the light switch at bedtime. Let each be an altar. Remember, the practice is not to stare at the cue, but to let the cue turn you toward the eye. The kettle boils, you bow within. The email pings, you do not pounce, you behold. The meeting begins, you enter as transparency. Be still and know that I am God. As these micro silences accumulate, not as numbers but as obediences, you will notice a new traffic pattern within. Fewer collisions, less honking of the will, more yielding to the right of way of grace. You will find the right word arriving on time, or the wisdom to keep silence, the courage to act promptly, or the ease to release an action that was never yours. Provision will appear, not as a drama of rescue, but as right order. A call returned at the exact moment, a thought forgotten and returned when needed, a meeting rescheduled into better timing without your pushing. Signs without strain. This comes later, but it begins here at the thresholds. Keep the premise pure. These pauses are not incantations to bend a second power. They are acts of fealty to one. If at any threshold you feel fear pressing to be fought, step back into the hush and refuse it, audience. Resist not evil is your safety. Do not set up a second power by wrestling it. Keep the eye single. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence announce themselves quietly where you do not intrude. So we go on. Beloved, not as performers, but as beholders. Let the day be sutured with silence. It seems strengthened by these small obediences. At every little gate, lift the head. At every door, open the inward ear. Sprinkle the day with brief obediences. Let thresholds become altars. And walking so, we will find that the house of our hours is truly the house of the Lord. And we shall dwell in it unhastened, unharried, unharmed all the day long. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Be still. Be still. We have sprinkled the thresholds with silence. Now let us enter the rooms. Let the sink be a basin of consecration, the stove a small hearth of praise, the broom a rod of quiet order. In the household the temptation is subtle work to be seen of men, bustle as if movement were virtue, talk as if many words could keep the walls from closing in. But the instruction has not changed. Enter the closet and shut the door, even while the hands are open and busy, not to be seen of men, but inwardly always sitting at his feet. Mary chose the good part. Martha may choose it too, not by leaving the dishes, but by letting the I in the midst of me do the dishes. Do you see? Not what the hands are doing, but what the heart is being. When you turn the tap and the water runs, behold, hands move, heart is still. Let the water remind you of the living water. Be still and know that I am God. The water that cleanses the plate can be a mirror that reveals the stillness that cleanses you. If the mind begins to tally how many forks, how many cups, how many times have I done this, place the finger upon the lips within and attend to the gentle motion, lift, rinse, set, lift, rinse, set, not as a trance, but as transparency. The I, which I am, is the doer. I, in the midst of me, is the wash and the rinse and the ease. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence at the sink closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, announce themselves where we do not intrude. The laundry basket is not a burden of cloth. It is an ark of small obediences. Shirts, towels, socks, the parade of the ordinary. These are not interruptions to your prayer. They are your prayer if you will be the beholder while you saw it. Whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as unto the Lord, not to impress a Lord afar off, but to consent to the Lord within, to be all that he is in the very folding of a towel. When you shake a shirt into the light, shake the mind free of its hurry. When you match a sock that seemed lost, admit the truth that nothing of God's is ever lost, and that the storehouse which I am holds even the smallest answers in quiet order. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, whisper if you must, and then let even that whisper dissolve into the silence that makes folding an act of beholding. Now, do not be surprised that transparency is tested at home. Irritation is a quick guest at the sink, the plate left crusted from last night, the pot no one soaked, the noise at the wrong hour. Be careful that you do not meet irritation with a second power in your own name. Do not believe you can conquer it by raising your voice or sharpening your silence. Resist not evil. Step back into the hush. If a flare of self-will appears, my time, my way, my standards, see it for what it is. Residue of the old belief in two powers, one to be fought, one to be made. Place the finger on the lips. Let the very heat be a bell. Return to the name. I in the midst of me is peace. I in the midst of me is sufficiency. I in the midst of me washes this pan without friction and dries this dish without complaint. The tempest does not need your rebuke. It dissolves as you refuse to be its stage. A soft answer turneth away wrath, so too does a soft silence dissolve the pretense of a second will. Love, then, is obedience at home, not sentiment, not the drama of sacrifice, order, gentleness, provision without display. Lay a table not to be seen of men, but because the I which I am is order and feeds its own. Sweep a floor not to prove virtue, but because the one life moves as tidiness and ease for all who pass here. Prepare a meal with no trumpet on the lips, no tally in the heart. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, ye have done it unto me, and the least of these may be the smallest task, the quietest corner, the unnoticed repair. This is not asceticism. It is alignment. To love the Lord thy God is to acknowledge omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence as the sole mover of the home. To love thy neighbor as thyself is to let that same presence appear as clean dishes, as a made bed, as a light left on for a weary returner, without claim, without credit. Do not get to relying on tools and tricks for holiness in the kitchen, the verse in the refrigerator, the chime on the phone, the scented soap fine in their place, but be careful that you do not take the words as if they were God. The power is not in the plaque. It is in the consciousness behind your motion. If the mind wants to turn washing into a ritual to secure a result, if I say these lines, perhaps the day will go my way, stop. That is, bargaining with a second power. Keep the premise pure. We do not act upon God. We stand aside and behold God acting as the very hush and order of this house. Let us make this a living act, not an idea. Take a utensil into your hand if one is near a spoon, a fork, or imagine it if nothing is to hand. For 15 seconds we will wash or dry in spirit. Hold the utensil. First, one breath acknowledging I. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me. Second, allow the thought to form, the I within me accomplishes this. And then let even that thought fade. Third, keep the finger upon the lips of mind. No tally, no hurry, no commentary, only the gentle motion, the beholding. 15 seconds. Be still. Do you feel how the simple act becomes spacious? The room did not grow. Your self-concern shrank. The spoon is cleaner, but more than that, your seeing is clearer. This is holy domesticity, not sanctimony, but sanctification by seeing. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength, and the house senses it. Children quiet sooner, not because you enforce silence, but because you brought silence. Partners soften, not because you argued, but because love, lawful, exact, unforced, stood revealed in warm soup and an unhurried tone. Provision shows itself as enough flour in the bin, a repairman arriving on time without your chase, a neighbor's surplus tomatoes placed at your door. Signs without strain begin in this basin. Eternal vigilance is the price here as elsewhere. You will forget and then remember. The plate will chip, the towel will sour, the temper will flare. Do not punish yourself. That too would be two powers. The very recognition is your bell to return. Lift the gates. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. Place the finger on the lips. Speak, Lord. Thy servant heareth, and go on with the dish in your hand as transparency. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. But when the Lord, the I that I am, builds by our beholding, every motion is masonry, every word is mortar, and the dwelling reveals itself as the house of the Lord, in which we shall dwell all the day long, unhastened, unharried, unharmed. Be still, be still. We have washed the cup and folded the towel. Let us now carry the same hush to the desk and the dollar. The world calls this place practical and imagines that God must be checked at the lobby desk for a visitor's badge. But the truth is unchanged. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God. Closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, and the desk is as surely an altar as any hearth. You cannot serve God and mammon, not because money is unclean, but because money is a symbol and God is the source. When the symbol is treated as source, fear is enthroned. When the source is beheld, the symbol arranges itself in quiet order. I have hidden manna, says the Spirit. The storehouse which I am is not in the market's mood, not in the client's temper, not in the budget's column, but in the I that I am felt within and appearing without as sufficiency. Seek ye first the kingdom, not because piety purchases paychecks, but because supply is an appearing of inner order, not a chase, you see. If we accept 2 times 2 is 5, we may work overtime laying spreadsheets upon spreadsheets and spoil the entire demonstration. If we accept that we must maneuver minds to secure provision, we set karmic law churning against our own peace. Take no thought for your life is not indifference. It is instruction to withdraw the manipulative thought that fogs the lens. My God shall supply all your need is not a promise to a favorite child. It is the nature of omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence to be complete. Our portion is to be still enough to behold the completeness and refuse to meddle. Begin where your fingers begin. Before you send, be still. 10 seconds. The hand hovers over send. The tongue within wants to sharpen a phrase, to protect a position, to curry a favor. Place the finger upon the lips of mind. Acknowledge softly, briefly, one power, one presence, one life. Then let even the acknowledgement fold into silence. In 10 seconds, the tone shifts from defense to clarity, from demand to service, from self to transparency. Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth. Keep the door of my lips and of my keyboard. The Father within orders this communication when we cease ordering it. Not to craft an outcome, but to consent to honesty without hurt, firmness without force, timing without tension. Many a conflict, born in a hurried sentence, withers when touched by these 10 seconds of hush. Enter meetings as a beholder, not to win, but to witness right action emerging. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, the I in the midst of us is present. Enter, then, not with the armor of argument, but with the listening ear. Keep the I single. Do not believe you can move a room by resting the wheel. Believe the room can be moved by the unseen order revealed when you do not intrude. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. If that is so, and it is, then the agenda you must carry is this: be still, behold, and obey the wisdom that appears. Sometimes you will speak a word soft as dew, and it will settle the heat. Sometimes you will ask a question, and silence will do the work. Sometimes you will say nothing, and the pillar of fire by night and cloud by day will lead another voice to bring the line true. Do not measure the moment by your airtime. Measure it by the felt rightness that follows when manipulation is refused. Let me tell you how this lives. A man, call him Thomas, faced a meeting that threatened to halve his department's budget. He had graphs, he had allies, he had, if he was honest, a mouth full of sharpened stones. The morning of the meeting, his email pinged with a provocation from a colleague, and the old machinery revved. Answer now, strike first, secure ground. Instead, a bell rang within the kettle of silence he had come to know. 10 seconds. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, and then hush. The Father within orders this communication. He did not send. In the meeting, instead of his planned opening barrage, he asked a single question: what outcome would let our clients be better served this quarter without burning our people? A different conversation began. A vendor volunteered a discount. A project date shifted and freed funds. His own team member, whom he had thought weak, offered a process change that saved hours each week. Do you see? Nothing magical, everything lawful. He had not won. He had witnessed the storehouse appearing through right order. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Practice now, with eyes open, for we do not need a cave to be saints of the desk. Look at the nearest instrument of your work, the screen, the pad, the phone. Imagine the next message you must send, the next voice you must call. For 12 seconds, keep the finger on the lips of mine. Whisper if you must, only to turn the face, and then let the whisper dissolve. The Father within orders this communication. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Let the breath fall into natural ease. 12 seconds, be still. That is all, and it is everything. You will find that words arrange themselves in the order of peace. You will find that you do not copy others' tones as quickly. The heat stays in them and does not enter you. You will find that what you do not send is as important as what you do. He that believeth shall not make haste. Haste is a confession of two powers. Rest is the sign of one. Now, as to the dollar, remember, money is shadow, God is light. Chasing the shadow cannot enlarge the substance. If we try to alter water by tinkering with H2Os, letters, we only ruin the word, not the substance. If we try to secure supply by manipulating forms, pressure, flattery, fear, we only stir the surface and hide the spring. Cast your net on the right side, said the Master. Not a new lake, a new side. Not a different employer, a different premise. After a night of fruitless labor, a moment's obedience to unseen instruction filled the nets. So with invoices, salaries, contracts, and checks. Keep the eye single. Do your work cleanly, bill fairly, sign honestly, deliver promptly, and between each act, retire within for 5, 10, 12 seconds, acknowledging the storehouse which I am. You will watch delays dissolve without your pushing. You will witness a late payment arrive with an apology. You will see a lost opportunity replaced by a better fit without the bruises of a chase. Give, and it shall be given unto you, not as barter, but as the circulation of one life through you. Do not believe there are miracle workers in the marketplace whose slogans can secure your future. Be careful that you do not take the words as if the trick phrase in a subject line or the charm of a handshake were God. Pay attention to the consciousness behind the words. Try the spirits of your own motives. If any tactic inflames fear or flattery, lay it down. Resist not evil. Do not set up a second power by fighting office politics with other politics. Step back into the hush and let love as law act. It will, and it does when you do not. So we keep the premise pure. Provision and right action appear when we behold rather than maneuver. The desk is an altar, the dollar is a servant, the storehouse is within. Many times in each day, before you send, before you speak, before you sign, lift the inner gate. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, one power announce themselves where you do not intrude. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight, and behind you will follow signs without strain. Be still. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth, and go on with your work as transparency, unhastened, unharried, unharmed. Be still. If the desk and the dollar seem to need a sanctuary, how much more the faces familiar, foreign, friendly, and those we have called foe. Here the temptation sharpens to defend, to explain, to strike, to withdraw, and yet the law is unchanged. Love means obedience. To love the Lord thy God is to acknowledge God as omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. To love thy neighbor as thyself is to acknowledge that the very same one life is the life of the one before you. There are not two lives, two minds, two powers, one to be appeased in me, another to be resisted in you. I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God, and I in the midst of thee. Keep the I single. Conflict is the theater in which our old belief in two powers wants its encore. Criticism comes real or imagined, and the personal self leaps to the stage. I must answer. I must justify. I must protect. Be careful. Do not set up a second power dressed as your virtue. Resist not evil, said the Master, not as cowardice, but as law. The instant we take up arms against the second power, we certify it. Turn the other cheek is not passivity. It is the turning of attention from face against face to in the midst, from argument to beholding, from performance to presence. We do not act upon God to silence a critic. We become transparent so that God appears as harmony where strife was rehearsing. Try the spirits, whether they be of God. Try the spirit of your own impulse. Ask in the hush behind the tongue, is this motion born of fear, of pride, of injury, or of the listening ear? If fear, lay it down. If pride, lay it down. If injury, lay it down. These are two power reflexes. Only the listening ear hears the word that heals. Be still and know that I am God. That is the reply before any reply. Pay attention to the consciousness behind the words you wish to speak. If you cannot feel the one behind them, keep the finger upon the lips and wait. Do not believe there are miracle workers who can change other people so that you may have peace. There are no such heroes. Man, in his silence, becomes the transparency for the miracle-working Spirit. That is the only miracle permitted to us. In all my years, I have never yet had God tell me about an error in any person. I have only been told to behold God where my eyes thought they saw error. Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment is beholding one life where two seem to be contending. Let us practice now, for this is not philosophy. This is an act to be done many times in each day. Bring to mind a face with which you have friction, a colleague, a relative, a neighbor, one who has criticized or who stirs your heat. Be still. For 20 seconds we will hold that one in the light of the one I. First, acknowledge softly, I is the name of God, I in the midst of me, I in the midst of thee. Next, let omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence be silently recognized, not as three words, but as one, presence in which both of us live and move and have being. Now, keep the finger on the lips of mind. Say nothing within. Become a beholder. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. 20 seconds. Be still. Do you notice how the sharp edges soften, not by compromise, but by clarity? In that 20 seconds, the fire lost its oxygen. Sometimes, after such stillness, a word will be given you gentle, exact, without bar. Sometimes you will find that no word is required and that circumstances shift of themselves. An apology arrives you did not fish for, an accusation fades as if it never was, or you are shown a correction to make in your own conduct, and the entire scene heals from that single obedience. A soft answer turneth away wrath, and often the softest answer is a silence into which a right word is born. Love proves itself in deeds, and the first proving ground is the table at home. Universalism begins where we pass the bread. Be careful that you do not preach the brotherhood of man on Sunday and speak contempt at supper on Monday, contempt of other parties, other nations, other races, other classes. Break down prejudice in the kitchen first. Let no joke degrade the image of God in another people. Let no remark train a child to see a second class of neighbor. Make room at the table for the unfamiliar friend. Send a plate across the hall to the neighbor you have only nodded to. Cook now and then a dish from a land you have feared, and bless that land as you stir. This is not sentiment. It is obedience to law. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, ye have done it unto me. Then let the same love move from plate to policy and purse. If you acknowledge one life at your table, acknowledge it beyond your fence. Support, as you are led, the feeding of those who do not carry your passport. Contribute toward the education of children other than your own. Lend your voice to fairness where the stranger is made small by rules that remember no mercy. Do not insist that your charity be thanked or your name known. Remember, the left hand need not know what the right hand doeth. Love as law breaks down all national, racial, religious, and color prejudices. This is a difficult one, very difficult, but nothing less will do if we mean to love the Lord our God with all the heart. To love the Lord is to let his nature be our nature in deed, not merely in creed. And when criticism comes close, sharp, unfair, perhaps public practice, the same law, withdraw for 10, for 20 seconds, even if only behind the eyes. The body may be in the room, but the ear can go within. Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth. Ask, am I moved now by fear, by pride, by injury, or by the listening ear? If words are given, they will be clean, no poison, no flattery, no evasion. If no words are given, stand in quiet transparency. Let love answer in its own time. You will find that authority without volume is the hallmark of one power. He shall not strive nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets, and yet the bruised reed is not broken in his presence. Pay no attention to the clamor of the crowd within those inner voices that keep a record of wrong. Charity thinketh no evil, not because it is naive, but because it refuses to set up a second power by rehearsing shadows as substance. If a correction must be made, make it cleanly, privately when possible, publicly only as love requires, and always after the hush. The law of consequence will move on its own axis. You need not push it. Your part is to keep the premise pure, one power, one life, one I. You will see, as this practice matures, that when a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. Not all at once, not always as you imagine, but lawfully, quietly. Signs will follow without strain. Faces that once flashed will soften. Criticism will become counsel. Differences will remain, but will be held in a larger light, and you will be kept unhastened, unharried, unharmed, because you did not take up another power to fight God's world for you. So we go on. Be still. Keep the finger on the lips of mind. Try the spirits. Love is law. At the door of every conversation, let 20 seconds of holy silence go before you. Lift up your heads, O ye gates. Let the King of glory come in, not as a speech, but as presence. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Be still. We have looked upon the faces of friend and foe and learned to let the listening ear answer where personal will once rushed in. Now let us turn to the most relentless critic of all, the accuser within, who keeps the account books of yesterday and calls the total punishment. Hear me. As we sow, we reap. But what we reap is not the breath of an angry God. It is the echo of our own split belief returning to its origin until we abandon it. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, not as vengeance, but as the lawfulness of a universe anchored in one power. Karmic rebound is not wrath, it is the knock at the door that says, you have placed two on the throne, come home to the one. Be still and know this. Punishment ends in the very moment of our enlightenment. When light appears, shadows cannot negotiate for another 5 minutes. They have no voice. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Do you hear? The instruction is not wear your shame as penance, but drop the belief that empowered the error and walk. The lash is not in God. The lash is in the belief that there is both a God of good and a force of evil jostling for your allegiance, and that you, poorly made, must pay tribute to both. The moment you see that I is the name of God and that I in the midst of me is that God, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, one indivisible, the whipping post collapses for want of a beam. Therefore, be careful that you do not take your remorse as holiness. Self-condemnation is pride turned inward. It says, I, by my sorrow, can fix the universe I disturbed. No, not self-punishment, but course correction. Confess not as spectacle, not as liturgy. Confess to your own heart the precise place where a two-power belief was entertained. I feared this circumstance as if it had power. I coveted that approval as if it were a source. I defended myself as if I were alone. Then returned to silence. Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth and before my mind. No rehearsing of the scene, no writing of speeches for the court of imagination. Keep the finger upon the lips within. The only acceptable prayer here is the holy hush in which the I that I am resumes the government upon its shoulder. Consider a simple figure from the sciences we learned as children. H2O. If we alter the formula, if we decide 3 hydrogens would be an improvement, we do not elevate water, we lose water. If we insist that multiplication shall now be 2 times 2 equals 5, our sums will not merely look odd, they will spoil the entire demonstration to follow. So it is in the moral and spiritual order. Change the formula of one by introducing a second power, a fear, a flattery, a personal righteousness, and you lose peace, though you may keep the word peace on your lips. Return the premise to one, and the demonstration writes itself. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. To be stayed on thee is to be stayed on one. Do not believe you can outrun consequence by outraging yourself. Do not get to relying on many prayers, many tears, many promises, as if quantity could coerce God. Pay attention to the consciousness behind the words. When the premise is purified, the rebound subsides because there is nothing left in you to drive it. In Scripture, you will remember the promise, I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten. Restoration does not come because we have cleverly covered our tracks, but because the track itself, 2 powers, has been lifted. The river returns to its bed, and the spilled fields drink again. Let us make this living. Bring to mind an error, a sharp word, a dishonest turn of the hand, a fearful decision that squeezed another. Do not dress it. Do not explain it. Hold it in the light for a moment. Now, for 15 seconds, we will practice the only miracle man may perform, the miracle of silence. First, acknowledge softly, I is the name of God, I in the midst of me. Second, form this one sentence and let it go. I yield my belief in two powers. Third, keep the finger upon the lips of mind. Rest in the hush without plea, without plan. 15 seconds. Be still. That is all, and it is the door. What follows is not a performance to impress God, but obedience to the light just seen. If apology is given you to make it cleanly, no theater, no self-abasement. If a debt appears, pay it as you are led, steadily, without drama. Agree with thine adversary quickly, not to purchase peace with cowardice, but to refuse the courtroom of pride. Bring forth fruits, meet for repentance, not as a bargain, but as the natural deed of a life turned again to one. The master's yoke is easy and his burden is light. Heaviness returns when we hitch ourselves again to two. Let me tell you how this lives in a heart like yours. A woman called her Miriam spoke in heat to her aged father. The words landed like small stones, and as she drove home, the inner accuser took the whip. You are unfit, you are ungrateful, you know the cadence. But there was in her, because of many small obediences, a practiced bell. She pulled into a quiet place. 15 seconds, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. I yield my belief in two powers, hush. Out of the hush, a simple next, turn the car, buy bread, return. She returned, placed the bread on the table, and sat in quiet transparency. A few minutes later, she said the clean words given her, no embroidery, no self-defense. Tears came, not the hot ones of pride, but the cool ones of release. The lash ceased where the light entered. The consequence unraveled where the premise was healed. Now understand. Consequence may ripple a while in the forms. What you sowed yesterday may still be coming up through the soil. Do not dig up the field in panic. Continue in the one formula life. Many times in each day, when the old fear or pride starts its motion, retire behind the eyes for 15 seconds. Keep the premise pure. One power, one presence, one life. He shall not strive nor cry, and yet crooked places straighten under that governance. You will find pathways of restitution without humiliation, protections without pleading, and a fresh order that arranges itself as you do not intrude. Signs will follow without strain. So we let go of the rod we have been using upon our own backs. We refuse the theater of remorse and choose the altar of silence. We confess the two-power drift. We surrender it. We rest. We obey. Suffering subsides where the belief in two powers is surrendered. Be still and know that I am God. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. And go on, unhastened, unharried, unharmed, for the government is upon his shoulder. And the one I, which I am, is our correction, our consequence, and our release. Be still. Having learned to lay down the whip of self-punishment and to rest in the one, let us now keep the center pure. Be careful that you do not take the words as if they were God. The letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. And spirit is never syllables. Spirit is consciousness. You have heard me say again and again, I is the name of God. I in the midst of me is that God, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. Do not imagine that a phrase about I carries the power. The power is in the consciousness behind the phrase. Words are the scaffolding that goes up while a temple is set. When the roof is on, take the scaffolding down and sit in the sanctuary. Be still. Do not get to relying on gurus or gadgets. Do not believe there are miracle workers. No man can perform a miracle except the miracle of silence. Man in his silence becomes the transparency for the miracle-working Spirit. The Master himself said, "Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one. Call no man master upon earth, for one is your master, even the Christ." Do you hear? Honor teaches only insofar as they point you away from themselves into the listening silence where the I that I am reveals itself. Be careful of any voice that makes you more dependent on the voice. Pay attention to the consciousness behind any instruction. If it leads you to stillness, to humility, to freedom from fear and from persons, receive it. If it inflames craving, hero worship, or the purchasing of peace with trinkets, lay it down. I do not ask you to despise books, meetings, beads, or apps. A psalm can be a stare, a mantra can turn the face, a bell can remind the ear to listen, but these are means, not the presence. Keep the finger on the lips of mind even as you hold the book. Let the tool do its brief work and then dissolve it into silence. If you keep stirring the pot of words, you will not taste the broth. The prayer that is acceptable to God is an absolute silence, and all sound, even holy sound, exists only to escort you to the hush. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Use Scripture operationally. Pray without ceasing is not an assignment to mumble through the day. It is the instruction to sprinkle the day with many small obediences, to enter micro-silences across thresholds before the call, before the bite, before the key turn. Enter into thy closet is not only a room with a door. It is the inward chamber behind the eyes. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength is not poetry, it is process. The process is always the same. Be still, acknowledge one power, let even the acknowledgement fall away, and behold, try the spirits, beloved, whether they be of God, and begin with your own. When you read a page, when you hear a teaching, when you reach for a device, ask in the hush, what is the fruit of this in me? If it multiplies argument, tightens the brow, or trains you to wait for a chiming gadget like a pet waiting for its bell, you have taken a tool as if it were God. If it opens space, settles breath, and ceases of its own accord as the silence takes over, it has done its work. Be not conformed to the aura of personalities. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind in the I that I am. Let this be practical now. A practice of 12 seconds. Where you sit, as you are. Do not seek a pose. Do not seek a word. Do not prepare an image. For the first 3 seconds, simply turn inward and acknowledge softly, I, only that. For the next 3, let even the sound of I dissolve. Drop all method, all posture, all holding, and abide as beholder. For the next 3, be nothing doing, no man performing. Be transparency. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. For the last 3, feel the ordinary room held in that stillness. Let the eyes remain gentle. Return to your deed without breaking the hush. 12 seconds. This is pray without ceasing, not as chatter, but as recurring beholding. Do it many times in each day, at thresholds, at turnings, between sentences, before you step from one room to another. Signs will follow without strain because you have not strained to make them. A word of correction in love. Do not get to relying on the thrill of novelty. New books, new phrases, new teachers, like changing the buttons on a coat, do not alter the garment within. If 2 times 2 is 5, you will spoil your entire mathematical demonstration, no matter how glossy the textbook. If your premise subtly offers 2 powers, my teacher's charisma and God, my gadget's timing and God, my favorite verse and God, you will set karmic law in motion against your peace. Purge the premise. 1 power, one presence, one life, keep the center pure, then any word becomes a window. Any teacher, a finger pointing away from himself. Any tool, a bell that rings once and is satisfied. Let me show you how this lives. A young man, call him Evan, would carry a deck of affirmations and count his breaths on a device until peace came. One morning his train stalled. His device died. The cards were at home. Panic rose as if peace lived in plastic and power in batteries. In that pinch, a remembered whisper, "Be still." He shut his eyes half an inch, no theater, and in 12 seconds let even the word "I" dissolve. The carriage of his chest dropped, the room unhooked from his identity. He sat as beholder. The train did not start for another 5 minutes, but he was already carried unhastened, unharried, unharmed. Later, with the device working again, he kept it, but he did not keep reliance. The center had moved from method to presence, so receive from every quarter and bind yourself to none. Read, but pay attention to the consciousness behind the words. Listen, but hear through the listening. Silence. Use, but release your grip when the tool has done its single office. Keep the center pure. Let all means dissolve into silence and beholding. And as you do, you will discover that teachers appear and disappear as clouds. Words rise and fall like waves. Tools come and go like vessels. But the sea remains omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, the I in the midst of you, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Be still. Pray without ceasing. Try the spirits. Speak, Lord. Thy servant heareth. Be still. Having dissolved our grasp of means and having kept the finger on the lips of mind, let us receive the assurance that follows such obedience. We do not make guidance, we behold, and guidance appears. We do not manufacture protection. We abide in one, and safety presents itself as the ordinary order of our path. We do not strain for supply. We return to the storehouse which I am, and loaves and fishes appear where counting had foretold lack. Be still and know that I, this is the law and the Lamb. The Scriptures speak in the language of our journey. A cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Do you see? Not a spectacle from yesterday, but a description of present governance, light fitting itself to our need, shade upon the heat of noon, fire upon the bewilderment of night. The I that I am goes before me, walks beside me, stands behind me, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, not as poetry, but as process. Thou goest before me to make the crooked places straight. And because this is so, I need not shove at doors nor batter at walls. The work is to be still, to behold, and to walk as bidden. Consider the multiplication in the Master's hands, loaves and fishes. There was no frantic manufacturing, no technique of enlargement, no budget meeting on that hillside. He looked up, do you see? He beheld the source. He gave thanks. And distribution revealed what beholding already knew. That is our pattern. We look up from the counting of baskets. We let I be I. We give thanks without grasping. We distribute what we have while the increase appears without our strain. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not wrestled, appeared, not engineered. Be careful that you do not interpret guidance as a private power to bend the path to your desire. Do not believe there are miracle workers guiding you around every pebble as if life were to be a trick road. The only miracle entrusted to man is the miracle of silence, by which man becomes a transparency for the miracle-working Spirit. Signs follow not because we tug them into place with statements, but because we ceased insisting upon our own way and yielded to the way that already is. Pay attention to the consciousness behind your gratitude. Let it be pure acknowledgement, not the bait of another miracle. How does this live? A man, call him Thomas, set out for an interview that fear had built into an altar at the curb. The small bell of obedience sounded. 10 seconds, then 15. Be still, I in the midst of me. You go before me to make the crooked places straight. Hush. In that hush, he sensed to bring along a thin portfolio he would have left. He did not analyze, he obeyed. In the lobby, the manager he had prepared to meet was called away. A second person appeared who, glancing through that very portfolio, welcomed him into a role better suited than he had imagined. No fireworks, signs without strain. Who arranged it? Not a technique. The eye that walks before us did what mind could not see and will could not perform. Safety appears in like manner. A woman called Ruth drove a familiar road. A cloud by day is guidance that looks like intuition. A pillar of fire by night is a sudden clarity in the dimness of an intersection. A stop she could not justify in words rose up from the listening ear. She paused, and a truck hammered through the red that had just turned. You see, not a private angel dispatched for her special worth, but the one presence being itself as her awareness. He shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. And those angels are not winged interrupters. They are the facets of omniscience, active as simple pauses and unplanned turns. Supply too. Do not count the baskets until you have looked up a small firm carrying a payroll that loomed like a wall, retired into 15 seconds here, 15 there, thresholds made into altars. I in the midst of us is the storehouse. You go before us to make the crooked places straight. Silence. Out of that hush, one clean act was given. Release a product that had been held back in overcaution and make 2 phone calls, not 10 named within. The orders that arrived were not the reward of strain. They were the appearance in form of a premise honored in silence. Prove me now herewith, if I will not open you the windows of heaven. And the proof was not a bargain, it was a beholding fulfilled. Gratitude is the law of safe receiving. When the appearing comes, money on the desk, a path opening, a harm avoided, keep the finger on the lips. Give thanks to the I that I am. Refuse the theater of telling the world the technique that did it. Refuse the grasp that tries to repeat a method. Remember, the left hand need not know what the right hand doeth. Your act is to be still, to say within, thank you, Father, and to let even that thanks disappear into the quiet. Gratitude without grasping keeps the channel clear. Practice now, for assurance is not a theory, it is a rhythm. 15 seconds. As you sit, do not assume a posture of effort. For 3 seconds, turn inward and acknowledge softly, I. For 3 seconds, speak once within, you go before me to make the crooked places straight. For 3 seconds, feel without image that this I walks before me, stands behind me, sits beside me. For the final 6 seconds, cease all words, let cloud and fire, day and night, be one presence holding you, be a beholder. 15 seconds, be still. Carry this through your thresholds. Before the key meets the door, before the call connects, before the contract is read, before the child's question is answered, 15 seconds, the I that I am will appear as timing, as turnings, as provisions, as protections. Sometimes the sign is a closed door, sometimes it is a sudden yes, sometimes it is only the quiet that keeps you unhastened, unharried, unharmed. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, not because we have persuaded God, but because we have ceased resisting God's ever-presence with our second power. So rest. Keep the premise pure, one power. Keep the practice small and steady. Many brief obediences. Keep the heart soft. Gratitude without grasping. And watch without watching for how guidance, safety, and supply appear as the natural profile of a life that beholds cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, loaves and fishes, walking beside me, behind me, before me, the same I yesterday, today, and forever. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Be still. What remains is not a flourish, not a finale, but the seal, the ongoing act of commitment by which all that has been seen is kept alive in motion. Eternal vigilance is the price of spiritual living. Do you hear? Not vigilance born of fear, scanning the horizon for foes, but the holy watch kept upon the heart that the premise remains one, that the mouth is kept from multiplying words, that the hand is ready to serve without theater, that the life moves as transparency and not as performer. Watch and pray, said the Master, not for an hour and not for a season only, but as a rule of life. Pray without ceasing, not with many phrases, but with recurrent silence until silence becomes your atmosphere. An act of commitment is not the pledge of a day. It is many small obediences in each day. We do not sign a page and be done. We sign again at the sink, at the desk, at the door, on the street, in the night watches. Behold, behold, behold. When the mind rushes to maneuver, be still. When the old fear rears up to claim two powers, be still. When praise tempts you to settle for the glow of approval, be still. This is not monotony. It is music, the rhythm of a life attuned to one, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. This is the metronome. Keep time with it. But hear this plainly. The proof of love is deed. If ye love me, keep my commandments. To love the Lord thy God is to acknowledge God as omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. To love thy neighbor as thyself is to embody that acknowledgement as bread, as water, as shelter, as education, as the breaking down of all national, racial, religious, and color prejudices. Do not believe that we are beholders of the one and then deny the one in the faces beyond our borders. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, ye have done it unto me. There is one household of God, one family under one government upon his shoulder. Therefore, we cannot confine our beneficence to those who look like us, vote like us, pray like us, or share our language. If we behold one life, then friend and so-called foe are alike the faces of I. Be careful, then, that you do not take philanthropy as a substitute for beholding, nor beholding as an excuse to withhold your hand. Transparency is not passivity. It is obedience. When the I in the midst of you gives you to send food, to underwrite a well in a desert place, to provide education for children other than your own, to employ fairly instead of cleverly, obey and do it without trumpet. Let not the left hand know what the right hand doeth. The love that is obedience to law does not posture. It performs its quiet office and dissolves into the silence that birthed it. By this shall all men know, if ye have love one to another. And that love is more than a sentiment. It is the universal deed that follows a universal vision. Do not believe there are miracle workers who will redeem the world while you remain a spectator of holiness. There are only beholders in whom the miracle-working Spirit finds transparency enough to appear as governance, as provision, as healing compassion, as structural justice enacted without hate. Pay attention to the consciousness behind your activism. If it burns in resentment and two-power rage, it will exhaust and divide. If it rises from silence, it will be steady, humble, persevering, unhurried and unharmed in the midst of pressure. He shall not strive nor cry, and yet the crooked place is straightened. Let me make this living in the terms of your day. A household chooses a tithe beyond habit, not to buy insurance from God, but to acknowledge one's source by becoming a source. They adopt no spotlight, They adopt a village school, sending steady provision until the school no longer needs them. A company reorganizes its wage ladder, not to win headlines, but because in the beholding of one life it cannot profit from another's hunger. A congregation that once kept its love inside its walls partners with a shelter across town and sends hands, not just checks, to paint and serve meals, no slogans, no badges, only aprons. In all these, the deed is born of silence, and because it is, it carries no residue of pride and no aftertaste of strain. Signs follow without strain, and the sign often is a widening heart that can no longer draw a line where God has drawn none. Some will say, must I not protect my own first? Be still and listen. Protection is in one. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things shall be added unto you. When the premise is one, there is no subtraction in giving. There is only the appearing of supply as the form called sharing. You cannot impoverish yourself by allowing I to flow. The storehouse which I am is never diminished by distribution. It is revealed in distribution. Do you see? We do not give to earn. We give because the one life we behold is the one life we are, and love is its law. Here, then, is a simple rule of life for you who would be beholders. Watch and pray without ceasing. Keep the finger upon the lips, no boasting, no blaming. Keep the hand ready, no postponing of the clean deed given you. Keep the eye single, no second power enthroned beside the Holy One. Let thresholds be altars. The gate, the email, the handshake, the meal, the bed. Many times in each day, retreat behind the eyes for 10, 15 seconds, small obediences, steady as rain, until the whole day becomes a sanctuary in motion. Transparency maintained in motion, this is the art. We will seal this now with a practice of 30 seconds. Sit as you are. No posture of effort. For the first 5 seconds, turn inward and acknowledge softly, I only that. For the next 10, let even I dissolve. Keep the finger upon the lips of mind. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. For the next 10, gently behold the human family, not by faces or flags, only as one, life shining everywhere. Let love move without image or plan. For the final 5, whisper within, thank you, Father, and let even the thanks fall into quiet. 30 seconds. Be still. This is the seal. Not a flourish, but a vow renewed each hour. As we persist without strain, without spectatorship, sustained beholding matures into a life of universal service and silent vigilance. The yoke remains easy, the burden light, because the government is upon his shoulder. And as we move as transparency. Unhastened, unharried, unharmed, one household, one power, one life. There shall be one fold and one shepherd. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth.